Well, what we want to do is we're going to actually shift. We are incredibly flexible here at Gateway, and we're trying to keep Erwin, from not being too structured. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of spend some more time with Q&A. Seems like there's some energy there, and we haven't given you some of that time with both of them. And so what I want us to do in this next session, we're going to really kind of continue to talk through how do we connect with that part of culture that no one's connecting to. And then once we reach people from that culture, how do we raise them up to be leaders? So we want to share a story with you, a story from one of the guys who's really a leader now at Mosaic, and his name is Emerson. So let's watch this video.
I see a world that needs hope. I see a world that needs inspiration. And so when I create out of my past experiences, good or bad. I lost a fiance that I was in love with. She got cancer and died a week before my wedding. And it created such a shock in my life, and it shifted everything inside of me, and I believed that there couldn't be a God to make me feel that much pain. And so at 21 years old, I turned to drugs, I turned to women, I turned to a life that had always been in my fingertips. Drug cartels and Mexican mafia. It took me to getting sentenced to federal prison for 5 years. I think prisons are created to strip away all beauty, all hope, all color. But there were moments where the walls were so gray, I thought color didn't exist anymore. And I think everybody finds God in desperation. And I think everybody finds God when there's no more hope. And so I had to believe that I would feel Jesus one day. Even though you can incarcerate a human body, you cannot incarcerate the human spirit. I tried to bring a smile to people, to bring hope. Why I use repurpose to prove that there's beauty, even in the forgotten, even in the abandoned, even in the left behind. But everything I create has a purpose. It's an example of who I used to be, and how you can take something that's forgotten, create beauty with it. Continue to imagine, continue to dream, continue to create, and to always remember that God is the ultimate repurposer.
You guys have a good lunch? Yeah. That's one of my good friends, Emerson. He lived in our house, him and his wife, for, I don't know, maybe 6 months with us. They were amazing. What's that? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They're still great friends. He's a great cook as well. So I was sad to see him go. Best fish tacos in the world. I mean, he's in Bolivia right now, seeing his dad. So it's pretty cool. So we wanted to pick up here, and this is the section I'm supposed to teach what's called the character matrix. But I thought it'd be really good for us, maybe since you've heard so much in the morning time, to be able to have some Q&A, interact with us before I give you a ton of content. But if you don't have questions, I'll just move on. You guys want to start?
All right, so I had a question about, on Tuesdays, I lead a men's group talking about like masculinity in the context of Christ's life. And I use the barbarian way actually for a little bit of that, so thank you.
Awesome, well done.
A lot of the guys come up to me and they are stuck in a weird place where they have accepted Christ, they do follow Jesus, but they kind of don't care That's the best way I can put it. So a lot of them moving them
Don't care about what?
following Christ in a way that amplifies his life in society. So,
Okay, so you want to like correct the second part of your sentence.
yes.
Because you said they've come to Jesus, they follow Jesus, but they don't care.
Yes.
Right, so one of those, either state section number 2 or 3 isn't accurate. Or maybe even section 1.
Well, using their words, they will come to me and say, I really want to follow Christ. I really want to stop sin A, B, and C. But I'm having trouble. I'm having trouble finding the motivation. So there are a lot of them are stuck in this place. I'm not sure how to address it. I was wondering if either of you have encountered that in your ministries, something that looks like that.
Yeah, maybe we could fix the monitors. That's great. Well done, John. That's an engineer.
That's the musician.
That's a musician. Okay. Ooh. There are music engineers.
There are.
Yeah, taking both those skills.
Engineers can be
blowing them.
creative too.
In my book, it says that all humans are creative.
Yeah, that's right. In my book it says because we're God's masterpiece. And it's because he has an order to things.
Where'd you pick that up?
One of your books. All right, what were we talking about?
Sorry,
I was
men who say they know Jesus, want to follow him, but don't care to follow him.
Yeah, and have been around for a little bit, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, and are having trouble finding the motivation
To lead. So maybe it would help me. Maybe you already have an answer, because I don't. And like, what are you trying to get him to do when you say to lead?
First, if it's even my job, or is that something where we need to let the Spirit work? But guys that have been around and seen, right, really close to that, seem to have leadership qualities, be men that have really good qualities, that could draw other people to the church, find the gospel to people that we know, who have come to me and say, John, I just don't have the motivation, I don't have the desire to preach the gospel to others.
Okay.
Trying to raise up leaders who don't want to be risen up.
what you're saying, but they've come to Christ in the last year and a half.
Yeah. And just kind of stuck in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, the guys that I pulled together in my first small group that were the closest thing to relative leaders, one was still smoking pot, one was coming out of a very promiscuous lifestyle, and as he was growing, then he started moving into leadership, and then he hooks up with a girl on the internet and goes and sleeps with her. Oops. So we had to kind of back up and then start going forward again. The other guy, he was sleeping around a lot, and I remember conversations out in the driveway going, why do you keep hooking up with, these hurting women and using them like that? And so it's a process. I mean, so you got to kind of look at them, I think, like, all of us are growing. So if someone is newly born again, they're going to mess their spiritual diapers, right? That's like normal. And when you have a baby learning, your baby is not going to just take off sprinting, or running a marathon. They're going to crawl, then they're going to stand up and fall, and then they're going to have to stand up and fall again, and then eventually they're going to walk. So I think my sense is the question is, what can you do to keep placing that seed in there and asking the right questions of, what do they think God wants for them? Who do they think God is? And are they willing to trust him in going there? But I mean, it comes back to some of the things we pointed out before, I think, that's lots of times the problem is the Christian community gives them the idea that God's will for your life is stop this, stop that, stop that, stop that, which is everything they've done for life. So it's the only life they know. And we haven't shown them there's a better life, and if you will trust him, you don't actually even have to stop this, stop that, stop that. I mean, Galatians 5, walk by the Spirit, and you will not carry out the desires of the flesh. But the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, it starts to grow naturally. But I think they have to have a picture of who God is and why is this life good before they're willing to start taking steps that way. That's
and I felt like you would give, strangely enough, the more compassionate answer. I mean, that's a really compassionate answer. It is a good answer. I mean, it's the right answer. I'm going to give you the wrong answer, and you need to start spending time with them.
Really, you would say that?
Yeah, because
If it's a year and a half old Christian.
yeah, man, dead weight. And you see, this is where people will be surprised because you're the engineer and I'm the artist. No, and if they have sin issues, I don't care.
When you say stop spending time with them,
Yeah.
you mean like say, go away, get out of our church? No, that's not what you're saying.
What you didn't mention even church. You just said they're in your life.
Oh, well, this is a Gateway College.
Oh, okay. You know things they
Oh,
don't
it's
know.
not ours.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. Here's the reason. You do whatever he says.
What are you doing spending time with them?
No. Here's the difference. See, you're hearing, like, I think the way you interpreted this is that they got sin issues. And you're saying, no, you don't discard them because they have, like, stuff. I would agree with that. What I'm hearing is that they have motivation issues. And I'm going, no, you spend time with people who are more messed up, who are desperate to change. Because if you surround yourself with people who are apathetic, you will infect everyone in your group with apathy. See, to me, I go, hey, John, I love you, man. And I don't care how broken or messed up or how much like sin you end up stumbling into all week long. What I can't take is apathy. Because my life is too important to me and too short to live in apathy. And so if you come here broken and screwed up every week, you're in. But if you show up apathetic and don't care about making the world a better place, and then you're not in this group. Because I want the most messed up people in the world who are saying, I don't care if I have one leg, I'm limping across the finish line. And that's a sense where I'm more ruthless than people would perceive. And, that is why I wrote The Barbarian Why. And because I'm like, in fact, I just told someone this. I spent 10 years with the urban poor. I'm an immigrant. I remember a time in my life where I was sleeping on the floor because I couldn't afford a bed and looking for change so I could buy something to drink or wash clothes and stuff. And I tell people, look, you can bring opportunity, but you cannot bring determination. And you have to find the poor who have determination. And when they have determination, you bring opportunity. What you find is a future. And so what you go to me is like you go after the guys who are the most messed up. You prove that Jesus can change anyone. But you cannot provide the motivation for a person to change. Does that make sense?
No, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. I was like hearing the other side of this thing.
Yeah, it's hard. It depends on where someone is, though.
It just because you really are the personification of only perfect people, imperfect people allowed, and I think that's exactly right. I think I treasure that. I think it's really, really powerful, and that's why we're Mosaic. It's broken. Everybody's broken and fragmented, right? And we're becoming works of art. And my son keeps going, are we ever not mosaics? There's got to be a day where we're not just like broken pieces, Dad, so he's not always loving my metaphor, but there's a part of it like, but I think that there's always a shadow side to every like piece of light. The shadow side is the part of you, the part of us that says, let's try, I need to accept them as they are, I need to accept them as they are. And so you're not speaking into the apathy.
Well,
rather
yeah,
than
and
the
that's
sin.
it. It doesn't mean to accept someone as is. Doesn't mean you don't love them enough to challenge it.
Right, but I'm not even talking about the sin. Like just
Yeah,
don't even
you're talking about willingness.
Yeah, don't even talk about the sin.
You're talking about willingness.
Yeah, make them run out of time.
Yeah.
Like when people ask me, how did you stop all these like huge areas of sin in your life? I ran out of time. You know, I mean, the best way to stop sinning is just not have enough time to indulge that. You know, when I find myself bored with extra time, I become more sinful. Anybody else? All right, you know, I mean, after all these years, I find the best way to be holy is to be doing holy things because I create space for unholiness. And so what I do is like I have a friend, Harvard grad, you know who it is, married to a Duke grad. And they'd come over our house, we'd spend a lot of time together, and then one day, I never saw him again. And he still came to Mosaic. A year later, like I kept trying to, you know, he just kept avoiding me. Yeah. And finally, I really loved this guy. And no like obvious sin, really godly, you know what I mean? So there's no like, fix this. Right. And I said, what happened? I thought we were friends. And he goes, I couldn't stand the feeling that I had to be more whenever I was around you. And I said, oh, I can accept the end of a friendship based on that. Because if you are in my space, I'm never going to let you be less. Ever. And that Harvard degree doesn't impress me at all. It's whether your life is actually counting for something. So I say you need to become like, you need to like man up. And look at that guy and go, man, I couldn't care less about, because all that sin stuff in your life, it's just damaging you and everybody you touch, right? You know, and it's just shrapnel that you're going to have to carry inside of your soul for the next 50 years. But that's okay. You know what I can't stand is the apathy, right? So you slept with your girlfriend, grab your girlfriend, and let's go serve the poor together. You know, I mean, so you messed up, all right, take up your messed up life, and let's go tell that story so that people can know that Jesus still meets you in your mess. You know, and so like, to me, the one thing you have to fight against is that apathy that needs to be replaced with passion. Because once a person begins to have passion, all the sin stuff, right, it just starts shredding off really, really fast. When I was an early church planter, I made the terrible mistake of only spending time with people who were needy.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I was like this blood source for all the emotional leeches in the world. I mean, they just like sucked onto me, and I thought, this is what Jesus does. This is what Jesus does. They're just, man, and you know what it's like, you know, and then you know what's really terrible, and this is a part of the uprising material, is that you invest and you invest and you serve and you serve and you love and you love and you give in your time, and eventually they just detach and go, you let me down. You're a hypocrite. You never were what you said you'd be to me.
And those you did the most for
right.
hate you the most
That's
on
right.
the way out.
And I realized when I was planting churches, I was spending all my time with the needy people who never served, and all the people who were less needy who wanted to serve. They didn't access me because they felt so sorry for me because I had no time. And all of a sudden I realized I have to reverse this thing. Who I give my time to is the value system I'm going to create in the culture. And so if you spend time with people who have no sin publicly but have no passion, you're not creating a better culture. But if you spend time with the most passionate people, you will move from a bounded set to a centered set, where it's not about how long you've been here, or how much Bible you know, or how much seniority you have. It's all about how passionate you're moving to the mission of Jesus. Spend your time with the person, no matter how broken they are, who's there to change the world with you and wants to do it.
We say, look for those who are fast. They're faithful, they're available, they're spirit-filled, they're teachable. And like when we were talking with some of the church planters yesterday, you know, early on, you interact with a lot of people, but you know, kind of like Erwin's saying, you got to challenge. You got to keep challenging, and you see, well, who steps up, who's eager, who's teachable, who wants to, and then focus more time there. That's what Jesus did, right? I mean, he had 70 people that he sent out, but there were 12 that he really invested in. And remember, some of them didn't go so well. His treasurer of the board, right? Never was a believer. But then he spent even more time with those three. So you do have to use your time really wisely. And that is where I would say, you know, if you got people who, and this is true in the early days, you have a heart for people. You want to help them. You want to help them get there. But you got to distinguish whether if you're wanting them to get there more than they're wanting to get there, it'll never work.
And they use the acronym FAST, so we use faster. And, you know, we use the same FAST, but then evangelistic and resourceful. And
Do you really?
no, I'm.
That would be way too programmed.
I just
have
thought it
a-
would be cool.
I have another
Another
question back
I hope
here.
that helps.
I have another question back here.
I'm coming from a different context, and you said something earlier, speaking to Erwin, not that you didn't say anything to John, you've said a lot. But you said that you had planted other churches. I'm kind of in a John Mark situation where I planted a few years ago, never got beyond 30 to 50 people, ran into somebody I went to school with that, in my opinion, couldn't preach his way out of a paper bag, and was running like a couple of hundred people in 15 months. It made me want to hang myself.
So he had more people in the paper bag than you did.
He did, exactly. So with that, I know that there's a lot of, and I'm looking at doing this again, and there's a lot of guys out there that do give up, and there's some that just kind of brave through. And the thing that you kind of said that wrecked me a little while ago is, you said you were really wondering whether or not you had what it took to do this at that time. And I realize now that that's probably been my quest since I closed, because I haven't thought about anything else since. And I was always taught that if you could go do something else, then go do it. And I've just been wrecked for it. And I want to go out and do it again. So I want to know, what was it for you that, was this just something that you started and said, okay, I'm going to see this through, even though these other things maybe weren't successful, they didn't work out? What was it that you had to come to say that this is it? It's hard for me to articulate what exactly it is I'm asking.
You're trying to find the motivation or the, can I do it again? Should I do it again?
I almost think it was because I went out with everything going out the first time. And basically I just got my feelings hurt and took my ball and went home. And said, well, if that's how it works, then, and I got my theology all messed up. I ran into another guy that I went to school with that was a brilliant communicator and just anointed and everything. And he was running a church after 2 years with 10 people. So, and then
Maybe you're not good at measuring talent.
Maybe.
I'm just saying, that sometimes we don't know what we're looking at. We're not measuring the right thing.
No, and I agree with that.
Because I don't think a person can be a brilliant communicator and end up with 10 people after 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be a chart. I'm just going to say what I think.
But the other thing I want to say on this, I think we, and guilty as charged, in the Christian community spend way too much time looking at each other and comparing.
Yeah.
And, I came from under Bill Hybels' shadow and Bill Bright before that. And I had to come to a day of going, I'm not either one of those guys, and I'm not wired like them. I'm not called to do what they did. Maybe they're a 10 talent guy and I'm a 5 talent guy. The question is, will I be faithful with who God's made me to be and what he's called me to do? And will I have his heart for a lost, broken world and be faithful to that? And if I will be faithful to that, I can succeed as me, not as them. And so there's not even, and I had to come to that not with all this size. That was when I'd left all that, and I was driving a truck and setting up and tearing down and having these hard conversations and, feeling like I'm a terrible communicator and I can't do this. And so I think faithfulness, and I think you got to know yourself. That's a little bit too about maybe you saying, well, he's a brilliant communicator, but something's amiss there, right? So you got to know yourself too. Is this what I'm called to? Is this what God's wired me for?
Yeah, and asking the question about what my motivation was or anything, that was a bad day. And because the more I became aware of Christianity, the more I went, wow, that's pretty amazing. Not happening with me. And but if you asked my wife or anybody who knew me, especially my brother, I felt successful every day. I was actually having the time of my life. I led people to Christ all the time. I was going places no man went. I led one guy to Christ with $300,000 of facial reconstruction because his face got blown off by a shotgun. And I followed him into the drug world, and I went in and out of places people don't survive. And I was loving my life. I mean, and it was a hardcore, really dark and painful world, and I felt like I was making a difference.
But you were saying that was at a time where you weren't in the limelight, you weren't being asked to speak at all these places.
Nobody knew who I was.
Yeah.
No, and so when I heard that on the radio, I turned on Christian radio and I heard that about that church. That's when I broke. I went, wow, man, I'm working so hard, and it's not happening like that. But that's because we're measuring like apples, to roses. I mean, that was in one of the highest concentration of Christians in one of the most affluent suburbs in Texas. Oh yeah, we're in Texas. And like if you can't go to a church there, you just don't have any talent. And
I won't say anything.
no. Sorry, I was just joking.
Austin doesn't claim Texas.
No.
No.
love the
Austin
Kleenex.
is like Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, set inside of the rich environment of Texas. So it can be, so there can be some place in Texas they can feel derision for. And,
And they do.
Yeah. No, like to me, it's like you got to just feel like you're doing something that matters. Look, I used to take my guitar and travel to the Mardi Gras and sing on street corners until I had a crowd, and I talked to people about Jesus. I used to walk into Sizzler steakhouses, talk to the manager, and say, hey, can I do a concert here? And they go, yeah, I do a concert in the restaurants and tell everybody in the restaurant about Jesus. I mean, I was taking a basketball to the projects until I had enough guys playing ball with me, and I, bring them all to Christ. And I mean, I started a soccer team, canceled church on Sunday because we moved up to a different level of league, and it was on Sunday. And I used to play a lot of soccer, yeah. And we led every single player to Christ, and we won the whole city of Dallas's, competitive soccer league. And we led all those people to faith. Like to me, there was always some exciting, fun way to make friends and bring people to Christ. And
That's the thing. I think if you see the potential, if you're not thinking so much about how do I grow this church, but you're seeing the potential of all these people who really need and want what you've got, then there are all kinds of opportunities, aren't there?
I've never had the thought in my mind, how do I plant a church? Or how do I grow a church? I've always had in my mind, how do I reach cities? How do I create a cultural shift that 1,000 years from now, Christianity will be thought of differently? And I actually think the thinking of just how do I plant a church is too small, because you tend to get a half-life to your vision. And if you're just thinking about how do I grow a church, you're going to get about half of that vision. But if you go, how do we make a historic impact on Austin, then you might get a half-life of a great church.
Yeah, a quick follow-up to that.
I didn't even understand your first question.
Yeah, I know.
So-
It was a little all over the
So-
place. But
But that was a great answer.
Well, you answered it.
I mean, I went out with all the passion and the gusto and everything, and it went where it did. And I guess it became less fun for me after just not seeing the results that I had hoped or had had. And after sitting with the guy that I referred my church to when I was closing, because he was the only one in the area that I saw doing everything I wanted to do. And what I had tried to get going, it was happening for him. And I sat with him and listened to the strategy that he put into what he did, and I realized I kind of just was anointed, and I went. And I just went. I didn't have any plan. I just kind of went, and we did outreaches, and I really did think, though I never would have said it, if you were a big enough personality, like the church just grew. Like people would just come. You do your outreaches, you do your serving, you serve the community, you love the community, and God just does that. And I do still believe that, but after sitting with this person and hearing the strategy that he put in, that there are things that we can do naturally to that. And it made me feel like I really didn't start the right way to begin with.
So are you going to, do you have a
I'm
question?
not saying I want to go 100%.
No, I'm just asking you
strategy.
if you have a question.
Okay, the question is, because I almost hear two different things from the two of you.
No, I'm going to make you ask a question.
Okay. Where is the tension between having a strategy and implementing it, and not losing sight of the passion and love that God does fill you with to go out and do it.
Okay, see, now you're making a statement again. I'm going to press against you because I think this is one of the reasons you're not succeeding. Is because you keep, instead of absorbing learning, you're trying to give teaching. So, like, bro, we're here to learn, so I'm gonna be hard on you.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
See, because you got John Burke. Like, he's one of the most thoughtful and knowledgeable church planters in the Western world. But you're still trying to tell us who you are rather than actually learn something. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm coming back to, what did it take for you to come back and do it after doing what you did and it didn't work out the way you wanted it to? What was it inside of you? I guess that's what I'm trying to get at.
Let me tell you the mantra I had to tell myself when I was planting Gateway over and over and over again. It's not about you, John.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this is so damaging to your ego. You know, and I'll tell you something that the Lord said to me. It was year 3, and I just felt like an utter failure because we kept having to move facilities, we kept reaching people, we kept losing people. I was hearing all the condemnation in my head, and the truth is, I was comparing myself to others, and I had to die to that. Literally die to it. And it felt like death. That's, Jesus talks about, take up your cross and follow me. And we're like, yeah, all right. But when it actually feels like you're dying, you're going to scramble for air. You're going to try to get to the surface. And I remember him saying to me, John, you have friends you were a missionary for a year in Russia, but they're still there 15 years later. And nobody knows them. And nobody cares how their ministry's doing, but I know them, and I know what they're doing. And what if I were asking you to go do that instead of start a church in Austin? Would you do that? And it made me, again, just kind of like say, all right, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, Lord, I'm yours, and what do you want me to do? And so I think there is it sounds like you've had pain. And when you do this, you do get wounded. And I think you got to deal with those wounds before the Lord. He is not only the one who proclaims the good news to the poor and sets the captives free. There's another line in there in Isaiah 61, and he heals the brokenhearted. And as leaders and church planters, I think if we don't let him heal those wounds, and you will get them, people will hurt you. And if you become protective, then you can't go into the world with that heart that Erwin is talking about, that just loves people and cares about people and helps others do that too.
You're so empathetic. I love that. He is, he cares deeply about, your wounds and your pain. I love that. It's just really, really beautiful. And I don't wear tattoos, because I feel like the scars are beautiful enough, and along the way, I gotta tell you, bro, I just loved my life. I just loved what I was doing, and I just loved getting up in the morning and getting to connect to a world that didn't know Christ, and one by one, I never saw myself as particularly talented or gifted or capable literally, my brother and I went forward on the same night to say that maybe God was calling us to preach a year after we became Christians. We didn't even talk to each other. We both went forward at the same moment. And my mom ran up and hugged my brother and said, we knew God was calling you into ministry. And no joke, this is not an exaggeration. I love my mom, but this is the truth. I was standing behind my brother, and she unhugged my brother, looked at me awkwardly and said, but what in the world is God going to do with you? And you can't put it into the mean category because she was just sharing out of her authentic soul, having known me for 20 years, 20 plus years. And I was, and to me, it's like, I feel like, I used to joke about it. that I was going to send so many people to hell by how badly I was at everything I was trying to do, that God just said, we have to make him effective. Like, give him some talent, give him a gift, because he's like damaging a lot of people. But I never like pursued fame. I never pursued success in the Christian world. I never pursued anything that has come like our way along the way. And even when I went to LA, I didn't go to be a pastor. I joined a church. Well, I didn't even join. I just attended a church. And the guy who was in charge kept saying, would you speak? And I did. And he goes, I think you should become the pastor. And I went to my wife and I said, no, I'm not going to be a pastor. And my wife said, you should never be a pastor. I know you. And that's what she told me, verbatim. And so like to me, it's like, I never had that ambition. I've never needed the limelight. I stopped writing books 6 years ago because I wanted intense anonymity in my life and wanted to be out of like the broader limelight. And I would read TripAdvisor every day. You know TripAdvisor? And I would look at places in the world and I would actually think I could go there and disappear. Every day. It was like my addiction. I could go there and disappear. I could go there and disappear. And so for me, I'm like, I feel like I'm doing this because the people that God keeps causing me to love matter more to me than the things that would make my life easier. Mm-hmm.
Man, that is so true, because
yeah.
I'm telling you, if I were going to set out and plant a church for me, I wouldn't have done this, and I wouldn't have done it this way.
Yeah, and so I would say, it's like one of it, I find a lot of Christian pastors or leaders would rather be the kings of a small empire than like a right-hand man in a kingdom that's expanding. And like, I didn't go to be a pastor. I didn't need to be the lead guy. My team will tell you, like, I relinquish power faster than anybody you probably ever met in your life. I haven't spoken in our main services since before this year. And I'm the guy speaking to 250 people that are hidden away, and Hank is speaking to over 3,000 plus 450,000 on the podcast. Like, to me, it's like the things that we keep telling each other make us important. They don't make us important. I love getting in that smaller space and try to figure out how to make it work, and how do you connect people, and how do you create a space where people without God come together. And that's like, just make your life a social experiment. And go, okay, I don't know if I have enough talent for this. I don't know if I have the right composition of gifts and abilities. I just know that I can love one person at a time, bring them to faith, and then talk to them about all their friends and help them bring their friends to faith, and see if God will like multiply that. I just talked to a church in another country that's a Mosaic, and I told them, hey, you guys are awesome. You have a cafe that has world-class food and coffee. You have a collective that's great at doing humanitarian projects. You're just not good at doing church. And I said, you're not a church. And one of them got angry with me. He said, what's a church? I said, well, minimally, followers of Christ engaging an unbelieving world, bringing them into faith with Jesus, and bringing them into the community of Jesus, where they become a part of this community, and then go back and are bringing the world to faith. I mean, that minimally would be like what the church is. And in 4 years, you guys haven't had one convert, but you have great coffee. So I'd say be a great coffee shop. And I said, there's a church down the street, and they're just better at doing what you want to do. So humble yourself and become a cafe collective connected to this awesome community of faith that the leader has the gifts to actually reach the culture. I don't think they're going to do what I ask, but see, to me, it's like, what's better is to be with people who make you better than to be less by yourself. Yeah.
I love what you said last night, Erwin, to Justin, John's son. You were talking about career, and you said, it doesn't matter if you're starting businesses or if you're a physical therapist, just as long as you're helping people connect with Jesus. Like, I think sometimes we're church planners, we can be motivated to make this grow so we can pay our bills, and that throws everything out of whack. All of a sudden, we got to be motivated to reach people, whether or not that's how we get paid, and that's where bivocational and some of the things of being a part of a team, small part of something big, can be really powerful.
Yeah, learning how to lead a group here that grows to 50 or 200 as a part of Gateway will develop your leadership skills 10 times more than floundering by yourself going, I don't know what to do next. Because you learn leadership skills in the context of leadership. And I find most people know how to solve problems, they just don't know which problem to solve. And most church planters who are not successful are trying to solve the wrong problems. Like, you're trying to solve what's our gay conversation, rather than how do we just become accessible to people? You know, and so we're trying to solve the wrong, what's our position on eschatology? Because, you know, every lost person is wondering that. you know, they're like, I'm not really sure.
Post,
Am I going to be a Buddhist or a Christian based on your eschatology? You know,
Yeah.
Buddhists don't even have one. And because everything's in the now. So, you know, and we're a lot of times solving the wrong problems. Yeah.
Another
Other
question
questions?
right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about in the church, there are probably Pharisees who don't want to be Pharisees. And so could you guys speak to, as you're calling out, as you're seeing and valuing the masterpiece and calling it out into the destiny God has for it, part of that is bringing them to places where they can serve and even being, you know, lead out, but that's going to be messy. And so then you've got the longer term believers around, and some of them are going to be Pharisees maybe forever, but there's some who are going to act like Pharisees but don't really want to be. And so how do you shepherd the body that's already there to learn how to be okay with the mess that's going to happen, and you know, because we tend to expect, well, you can't put this person in leadership until they are at a certain place, but I don't think that's you know, I think there's a place to call people and let them serve in places that maybe they're not quite ready for. But
So the question is how to help a Pharisee
yeah,
move away from being a Pharisee?
maybe share some stories or some things you've learned from
Okay.
from Gateway or from your experience of helping those longer term believers to be okay with letting there be some mess, and it's going to happen, and be okay with it.
I mean, that is why I wrote Mud in the Masterpiece. Because we, you know, after we built this building, we got on the map of Christians looking for a church. And Erwin and I were kind of joking last night, but I think we both had a time when we wanted to quit because of Christians. And he said some things, and I was thinking last night, oh man, I've said that too. You know, like, man, Lord, I don't like Christians. Which is a weird thing to say. I mean, honestly, you know, but there is a form of Christianity that's just not very attractive. I mean, it's just not very Jesus-like, and so we've definitely had our share of that, especially since moving into this building. And I guess I don't have a perfect answer. Because I've taught on it, and I wrote about it to try to get people to see the heart of Jesus and what he is about and what he does. To say, are we really following him? Or are we following a form of Christianity? And we're saying we're following him. So, you know, you have a good answer?
Well, you know,
I wrote a
last
book,
night-
but it's not, I don't know a way to summarize.
Well, let me say, the conversation we had last night is redefining what it means to be mature.
Yes.
I think that,
And we're doing a lot trying to talk about that.
and I think even what you did in the last year when at Mosaic, I mean, because M468 was, it was a huge shift. I mean, some amazing things happened, but there was some intentionality behind what God did there.
Yeah, I mean, we had people in leadership when I got there that shouldn't have been there, because ours was kind of an odd hybrid. We were part of a church where the pastor had been there 20 years. Then I transitioned and became the pastor. Well, he stayed for 6 years as one of the elders. And he called new elders that were his lifelong friends the day I became senior pastor to solidify his power in the church while he was no longer the pastor. And for the first 6 years, and then we would grow, and the church was about 500 max, including every child and anybody driving by the street. You know, the way, you know, Christians count. And we went from 500 to 1,000 3 times in about 6 months' time. We hit 1,000, self-destruct, go back to 500. Hit 1,000, self-destruct, go back to 500. And it was really out of that I wrote Unstoppable Force. And because I began to realize that the Christians that were in control had no desire to grow. These things are not easy, because, see, to me, no one who is a Pharisee doesn't want to be a Pharisee. They want to be a Pharisee, you just don't want to believe that about them. because they're your friends, because you love them, because you see the good part of who they are. But they want to be a Pharisee, because we are what we want to be. We need to take responsibility for that in our lives. And it doesn't mean that everyone loves change, but we have people who are still with us. Our oldest people, the ones in their 90s, they're still with us 20 years later. Inez Armstrong, she's got to be 90 years old. She would send me notes almost every month saying, I never saw that insight in that passage. Of course she did. God is working in your life so much. For about 10 years, she sent me cards with little Starbucks coupons. And after 10 years, I went to Inez and I said, you stopped sending me cards. What's the deal? She goes, you don't need them anymore. And it was the most beautiful thing. We've moved probably, 12 times? At least maybe 20 in the last 20 years, sometimes with 1 day's notice. And people have lost us for 3 to 6 months at a time. These senior adults, they just kept coming with us, and they're driving all the way across the city into Hollywood, and they're still there with us. And it's because it's not about your age, it's about your heart. Yeah. And Inez would always say, I prayed all my life for this church to make a difference in LA. Why would I leave now? They're like, we've prayed all of our lives for this to happen. And it's that tenderness of spirit. But
So maybe it is. Maybe it's the Jesus approach. Like, he spoke hard words to the Pharisees.
Yeah.
That's who he was.
Yeah, so I had mantras. The church isn't here for you. We are the church, and we're here for the world. We had like really hardcore mantras early on, and basically I just laid the gauntlet, and in the last 18 months it became even more so. I did that a lot, and then about 2 years ago I pretty much said to the elders, it's kind of like you or me, but I'm going to give you a chance to fire me since you're the elders, but if you decide not to fire me, all of you are gone. And because I was just done. I put in my 20 years, and I said I would never let the next pastor be treated the way you've treated me. I said, I just won't have it, so I'll make sure you're gone before the next guy has to step in. And I'll bear those wounds, but I won't let some young guy bear these wounds. And Eric actually helped us transition that and caused the vote where they resigned. All of them resigned willingly except for one. So I went to all of them afterwards, and I invited them back as elders, except for the one. And they asked me, why are you asking us back? And I said, because the only person you cannot entrust with power is the one who will not relinquish it. And there's something evil and subversive in a man's heart. He will not relinquish power. And as soon as we changed elders, even with the same elders, but different spirit, our church exploded. Mm-hmm. We grew more in the last 18 months than the first 20 years combined. And we've seen more people come to Christ in 1 year than all the 20 years combined. And it's just fun. And it's easy, and we're all on the same page, and we love each other, and there's this incredible community. All of our staff meetings are at my house. Like, I'm a very, communal person. A bunch of our staff have all lived with us in our home, some up to 2-3 years. And they just come and stay with us, and they bring their families. We had kids, family of 3 kids, and every staff meeting right now for the last year has been in our house. We just meet all day at our house, and my wife goes crazy because we destroy the house up, But because I said, look, if I wanted to be the president of IBM, I would make that my ambition. I wanted to be the leader of a tribe. I want us to be a community. I want us to have a culture that, we are, walking together through life. And it's a really beautiful thing. But the only way you can change a Pharisee is speak into their life and say that I'm going to assume that you don't want to be this person. So I'm going to call you to be someone else. And I like to always believe that everyone wants to be the best that they can be, the best self. And if you don't assume that, you don't call that person to it. But 18 months ago, I kind of went to the church and I said, hey, I'm cutting every campus free. You can either become your own campus or we're going to shut you down. I'm going to Hollywood. We're going to reach Hollywood and reach LA from there. And if you want to go with us, go with us. And I met with people who lived really far away. We had a little dinner. And I said, you can find it at the church. But Mosaic is a historic moment. In 1,000 years, people are going to be reading about what's happening here. So you have a choice. You can go to a church that's closer, more convenient for your children, or you can be a part of marking human history and be able to come to the end of your life and looking back and going, what we did together has rarely ever been done in the world. Up to you. And when we moved, I told my guys, what percentage of people will move 40 miles with us? And I said, maybe 60% or 25 miles, whatever it is. And I said, let's take 110%. And we not only didn't lose a single person in our massive move across the city, we added people in our move. See, because I don't think going to church is that inspiring. but I think making a mark on human history is. I think creating a new humanity is incredibly inspiring for people. And I used to think that even us, like, as leaders, we can almost like forget that we're not leading a church. We have been entrusted with leading a movement. And we're carrying on this revolution that started 2,000 years ago. And every once in a while, I just forget. And have to go, oh, that's right. I'm not speaking to this room. I'm speaking to the world through this room. I'm just giving this room the message to carry to humanity. And that's the preaching that changes the world. That's the leadership that changes the world. And that's how Pharisees go. I'm done being a Pharisee. I'll take the robe off. I'd rather just try to tie the towel around my waist and join this group.
I will say I had to repent personally of my attitude toward Pharisees. Because there was a point at which God said to me, you have compassion for people who are heroin addicts. They are in all kind of, menage a trois, everything, and...
A what?
Yeah.
How do you know that?
Because they're real open about it. They're open to anybody. And I didn't get, no, don't go there. Did not go there.
We're just listening. You're the one speaking.
Right. Maybe I'll stop. But God basically said to me, you know what? They're people too. They're just wounded and they got their own junk. Yeah. And I wrote several stories in Mud the Masterpiece of hardcore Pharisees who sitting right up there, and her story and how she repented.
You just can't let them lead.
Oh, yeah.
No,
you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
And that's the problem churches make, is that you need to create space. And I love that. That you have to love Pharisees just like you love prostitutes. You have to love everyone, but you can't let them lead.
Yeah.
And we're smart enough to not let a prostitute lead, but a lot of times we're not smart enough to not let a Pharisee lead.
Yeah.
Time for one more question before we go to breakout.
One more question.
Question over here?
Here we go.
Okay, two, because he raised his hand over there. Go ahead.
Okay, you said earlier that you try to create these transcendent moments for people to experience God, and then my assumption is that out of that moment that you want them to, I don't know what you want them to do, so that's part of my question. But then, I'm assuming that you want them to know Christ and come to Christ through that. So yeah, you can reflect on that. But then the real question is, how do you, out of that, then teach your leaders to cultivate or teach that, try to create that moment? Does that make sense?
How to turn around and do the same, of creating transcendent moments.
Yeah, because so you're creating a church that's a reflection of you and the people that you want to reach, and so that's this artistic.
No, I'll reach anyone.
No,
they just decide on their own whether they like me or not.
Right. Okay. So just speaking of that transcendent moment that you're trying to create, so that whatever the so that is.
Well, so that they meet God.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I just didn't want to speak for you because I'm.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Anyway.
Did you say because you're afraid of me?
But I want you to give insight. So John has vision. It's aligned with process, and that's how leaders get trained.
Right.
How do you train leaders to create the transcendent? And we don't create that, and I get that. So I'm trying to be as rudimentary as I can here without putting words in your mouth.
Yeah. You're trying to be so careful. And I know. I'm a ruthless dissector of words.
I was going to ask John a question. He's the empathetic one.
Yeah.
How does he create these transcendent moments and then help others do the same?
Yeah, in leadership.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Because
it's funny. Lawrence is right here, and Lawrence, just very good to see you. If you have questions about Mosaic, this is Lawrence Fudge, and he's kind of like almost like our executive pastor. And although I'm not really good at defining roles, but he's getting really good at helping people define the roles. But that's one of the things like Lawrence would ask me. He would he's like this endless learner, and he would follow me around and he'd go, okay, how did you do that? I mean, that was almost like one of your primary questions. Okay, yeah. I don't want to know where you got the answer. I want to know how you knew that. And I would say it would be fair to, that you would acknowledge is that you've been in moments with me where I just know things about people that you can't understand how I know. And that he goes, okay, how do you get there? And I don't fully know, other than being in those moments. When you're in a moment like that, you start to know what it feels like. And you start to experience it. And part of the reason people don't know what I'm talking about all the times is because they haven't been in those moments oftentimes. The best way I can explain it is I pay attention. And I'm really listening to God. And, I come from, I guess I was led to Christ by evangelicals, But my daughter, when she traveled me around the world, said to me, after a year, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. She goes, you can read people's minds, can't you? And I go, no, I can't read their minds. I can read their hearts. And she goes, read their hearts. You know you're scary, Daddy. And I started talking about spiritual gifts. The first time we ever had a conversation about spiritual gifts. Like, for me, all this is like really on the down low. I hate everything flamboyant in the world. It's just not me. And I said, Mariah, I don't make a big deal of it, but I listen really carefully. And Jesus tells me things about people in the room. And I don't make a big deal of it. I just start speaking what I hear. And one of my more recent fun guys is a guy on Vampire Diaries. I didn't even recognize him, but he's like grilling me. He's an atheist, first time at Mosaic. I think it was his first time, right? Lawrence was there. And we were having this argument about God in front of like 80, 100 people. And as I'm answering all those questions about God, I just like, for me, the way I create this moment is I try to bring people into the universe inside of me. See, I don't try to preach out. I try to preach in. I try to pull you into this space inside of my soul because I know that's where God exists in an undeniable way. And if I can bring you into this space inside of me, I feel like something is going to happen. And so as I'm talking to him, I went, oh, you're done, right? I mean, literally, like no transition. I said, you're done. He goes, what do you mean I'm done? I said, no, you're done. He goes, what? And I said, I've seen into your soul. You're like a fish dangling in a net. You're done. I don't even need to answer any more of your questions. He goes, what do you mean? And I said, let's move on. He goes, I said, you're not going to leave here without Jesus. And I didn't even know, but 45 minutes later, he was with you, giving his life to Jesus. And I didn't even know he came to faith, because I didn't even know he was on TV. All I saw was inside of his soul. And I'd seen every one of his shows, ironically. And then a couple of weeks later, he's being baptized. I never do this, but I thought, I'm going to go see the people being baptized, just to say hi. I went back there, and he was back there. And I looked at him and I went, oh, are you on Vampire Diaries and Cult? And he goes, yeah. I'm also the guy a fish dangling in a net. That's what he said. and, so some of it is like you have to have the courage to listen carefully to create those moments. But my
trust, right?
Oh, yeah.
Does it feel risky to you?
I'm scared. I want to pee in my pants every time, because I'm going, man, like, I don't know, And so I hedge my bets. Like, I try to cover my butt because I don't want to look like an absolute idiot. Because I know like one atheist, multiple atheists, I lead a lot of atheists to Christ. I mean a lot of atheists to Christ. And like, I'll have an atheist come and say hi to me. This is exactly what happened. And I said, first time here? They go, yeah. And I go, I can tell you don't want to meet me, but your sister made you. She goes, yeah, I'm kind of uncomfortable. And I said, can I ask you a question? She goes, yeah. I said, you're an atheist, right? She goes, yeah. And I said, but somehow like your soul knows something your brain doesn't know. Because tonight, God told you he existed. And she goes real quiet. And I said, you could admit it if it's true. And she didn't respond. And I thought, oh no. And she goes, I said, okay, before you answer, because she didn't answer. And I said, God also whispered inside of your soul that Jesus is his name. And she said, yeah, that's right. And it's like, it's really easy to lead an atheist to Christ when God has already intervened and snuck in the back door. Chinese, sorry.
Well, we'll finish, and then I want to...
No, there's no end.
Well,
there's no
end. There is no end. No. But that's fascinating, because that's a prophetic gift, right?
Yeah.
So you have a prophetic gift. I don't. Mm-hmm. And yet there's something similar, and I like...
because the gospel is prophecy.
Well, and Jesus is alive and he's doing something, and you got to listen to figure it out. And so I'm more analytical. I don't have that prophetic gift, but there's something you still have to do, which is you got to listen and discern what's God doing. You know, like I remember I was late for a flight. I was going to be speaking in Las Vegas, and I was all uptight because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be there, and I'm going to be speaking. And I was getting all worked up, and I just said to the Lord, okay, look, you already knew about this, so what do you want me to do? I want to be available. And I ended up getting redirected to another flight, so I'm sitting by someone different, and I was like, I really need to think about this talk, but if you want me to talk to this person, I will. And so then this lady next to me, the other one next to me has a baby, and we take off, and the baby just everywhere, you know, it's just like blowout. And so the grandmother lady looks at me and she goes, oh boy. And so we both kind of jumped in and helped, and I just said to her, I said, man, you look like a diaper changing expert. And she goes, I've had a lot of practice, just had a grandchild. And so I just said, oh, well, congratulations. Yeah, my daughter, she just came to live with me, and so we're changing lots of diapers. She was at Brown University, but then got pregnant, and you know, so she moved back home, dropped out, and is at home. Okay, so I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so she's got this daughter, got pregnant. What do I do? What do I do with that? And I decided, Brown University, wow, she must be proud. So I just focused in on that, and I said, wow, you must be really proud of your daughter. And that alone, she starts talking. And she starts talking about her family, and I just kept asking questions. And before you know it, I find out that she is very proud of her daughter. Her son's broken her heart. Grew up with her husband abusing them all, and he was a drug addict, and finally she left him. But he pulled her son away, and his son became a drug addict, and she kept trying to help her son, and her son ended up robbing her to buy cocaine, so she finally had it and called the cops. He went to jail for 4 years. They haven't spoken to each other. And I mean, we're just flying on a plane, and she just, you know? But it was like, that's it. That's where God is at work. She's brokenhearted about her son. She's very proud of her daughter. So I don't have a prophetic gift.
No, you see, and I think
But I had to listen and realize God is at work. And I said to her, I said, you know, I have seen so many drug addicts and broken families be restored. It's unbelievable. She goes, oh, no, not him and not me. It's not going to happen. I said, no, really, God can do anything. And she says, well, he didn't know about this, and there's no way this is going to. And anyway, so my whole point, by the end of the flight, okay, we had talked all about God, all about his will for her life and this broken relationship and all this. And she turns to me and she goes, are you an angel? I said, actually, I've never been accused of that. And no, but God cares about you. And I have no doubt. And I said, I prayed, God, if there's someone you want me to talk to today, show me. So he knows, and I do think he sent me. And she gives me a big hug, and she wants to, start following her at campus. I don't know if she did or not, but all that to say, I was just thinking that that's a gift. I don't have that gift.
I think it's the same gift. I think it's the gift of listening.
Yes.
It's just, everybody's personality plays it out differently.
Well, and realizing too that God is at work. He's at work everywhere.
And it's listening in layers.
Yeah.
Because you're listening to what people say, to what they didn't say, but you're also listening to what God is saying and what's happening in the midst of that.
And then there's that taking the risk, right? Yeah. Where you're like, you're gonna put something out there and you're not sure.
But I think that some of it too is you have to believe that the world is sacred and not secular.
Yeah.
And so part of your job is to see the fingerprints of God already everywhere. And as you start identifying that, you'll just essentially become a mystic. People go like, how did you see that? It'll become so obvious to you because you'll see God working everywhere in people's lives. I know we have a question here, and I know we have a break.
Well, let me ask this. The question, can we wait for the next Q&A? Would that be all right? We'll let you go first. Okay? So what we're going to do next, we're going to go to our breakouts, and then we'll come back right here in this room at 3:15. And so let me just...
And can we say, like, no questions during the break?
Yeah, that's great. Save the best questions, because we want to hear your question during the Q&A. So that's great. We'll do that. So take literally your stuff right over to the kids' building or the garage. I'm hoping you've already read through this. We have some amazing people here that you want to go in here. The garage is across over there. The playhouse is downstairs. The other 3 rooms are upstairs. And Brian will be right here in this room. So let's go right over there. Right after that, come right back in this room, and we'll have some more resources to share with you.